Data centers can increase the ground temperature by 16 degrees Fahrenheit, so I guess there's more reasons than one that you wouldn't want to live next to one. They also create their own climates, which is something that I didn't know until recently. The current research would say that this effect is about 10 kilometers outside the area of the data center, and it's hottest around 4 kilometers, and that may not sound like a lot, but we are talking about hundreds of millions of people that will be affected by this. I don't know about you, but 15, 16 degrees sounds like an awful lot. Now, as you may be aware, companies are trying to find locations for their massive data centers, and communities are fighting to keep them out. OpenAI's plan would require as much power as the entirety of India, which is just astronomical. Now, some companies like Microsoft are trying to purchase their own nuclear power plants, but there's a lot of regulation and a lot that goes into running a nuclear power plant. The alternative is to compete for resources from the power grid, yes, the same one that provides communities with electricity, and there's a similar issue with water. Now, this may seem unintuitive, but water is not a perfectly renewable resource. If you're pulling water from the water table, from rivers, or even worse, aquifers, that goes to cooling equipment, and that water ends up in the air. Yes, we are talking about making communities both hotter and more humid, though I'm not a big fan. Once water ends up in the air, it can form clouds, and eventually it will rain down, but there's no guarantee it will come back to the same source it came from. Depending on how that water is disposed of, so it may put heat into the air, and that will increase air temperature. It may put it into the water table, and that will increase the water temperature, which is very bad for the environment. Or it may end up dumping heat into the soil, in which case the land heats up. Now, this is not a problem that is unique to data centers. Anything that we do, including producing power, is going to produce heat waste, and that heat waste has to go somewhere. It's just that we kind of need power, and there's reasonable alternatives. Hydroelectric dams are great options. Ask me about zebra mussels. I have feelings about those and hydroelectric dams. Yeah, this seems entirely unnecessary, and we're also putting these centers into electrical grids that are already fragile, especially for, say, Texas. Also, it turns out putting something that needs to be cooled into a very hot environment is just not terribly efficient. On a bright note, there are other ways that we can use heated water that does not entirely go to waste. Yes, you could provide hot water to communities, ideally for free if it's just going to go to waste anyway, but I guess that's not how things work. There are actually some lagoons, so some man-made hot water springs that people like to enjoy in Scandinavia that come just from wastewater. I know, it doesn't sound very appealing when you call it wastewater, but it really is just water. Now we can talk about urban planning anytime because the floor actually is lava. Yeah, asphalt can be 50 degrees higher than the grass. Why do we live this way? Follow for more.